We've got our next guest, Jessica Gardner. She is with Academy Bank and Armed Forces Bank, and very excited to have her be a part of Behind the Leads as our guest. Funny story with Jessica, I probably called you and emailed you at least 50 times before we were able to connect. So thank you for not for at least taking the phone call back. This is before this call. This is when I was trying to sell our services to you. So it's been a fun journey with you, and you've got a great team. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat about mortgage and leads, something that I love both of those things and marketing, of course.
Yeah, bringing in somebody on the marketing side, I think, is interesting because you kind of get to see it through their eyes. And what is it like to work with loan officers in the mortgage business when you're head of marketing? You do a ton of lead buying, so you're spending a bunch of money, a bunch of the company's money on lead efforts, and you got to get an ROI on that. So that's fun. Well, tell me, just where did you grow up?
I grew up west of Toledo, Ohio, which people usually can tell because I have a real Chicago sounding accent,
Uh-huh.
which I get a lot of comments on, but in a little town called White House.
Okay.
So yeah.
You in Toledo, Ohio. You go to college. Is marketing in the picture, or is it something completely different? What were your kind of your goals there?
Well, I actually started at Bowling Green State University majoring in music. But I have a wonderful sister who's 10 years older than I am, and she had majored in vocal performance and music education. And it was a tough life. And
Hmm.
I reconsidered very quickly. And then I basically worked my way through college. I worked full time at, this is a blast from the past, but at a vacuum cleaner company called Dirt Devil.
Uh,
I started as their
uh,
receptionist answering phones, fielding a lot of questions about why we weren't called Dirt Angel. So lots of opinions on that. And through that, I was exposed to a lot of different parts of business and corporate America. And it just felt like, well, I really loved sales, which is where I actually started my first, I consider it like my real job. As a program manager, like a national account assistant. And then I transitioned into marketing after I got my degree in communications because it just felt like a better fit for me.
and that
So
was all at Dirt Devil.
yeah, that was all at Dirt Devil.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So if you're in the music side, you're definitely creative. So you have a creative side to you. You have to if you like
To
music.
some degree, yeah, I
Yeah.
think, and I like, I on the marketing side, I started more in like PR and writing and things along those lines. So I definitely don't have visual creativity.
Hmm.
Please don't ask me to design you something. The best I can do is probably a really good PowerPoint, but
Uh-huh. But you know what it should say. You're very good at creating the content on the as far as writing and things. So that's
thanks.
that's that's good. So you're working for Dirt Devil. You're in Ohio this whole time,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're moving up the ladder. You realize, okay, this is I like this marketing thing. It's pretty interesting. Where do you go from there?
I have like a pretty weird, varied experience, professionally, which I think lends to good marketing because you have, the kind of that diversity of experience gives you a variety of places to pull from. So after Dirt Devil, I worked for MTD Products, which is like outdoor power equipment,
Okay.
supporting their national accounts teams with marketing, a lot of in-store, marketing, event type marketing, those kind of things. Now they're owned by Stanley Black and Decker, but that was an awesome experience. And then I just kind of kept going, and from there I went to Matco Tools, so
So you
automotive tools.
wow.
Just like a really random. I know that's what most people are like, but and then after that, I worked for Ohio University,
Hmm.
leading marketing and recruitment for their College of Business, go Bobcats. And then from there into financial services, into banking. So
So if you're going from one industry, which is completely separate than mortgage, and then you go into college, what was the reason that you moved from that industry into the university? Was there a specific reason?
well, there were a couple of reasons. I was, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but I was pregnant with my second son. I have boys,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted a little less of the grind and was
Hmm.
hoping for, just kind of just a more mediated pace, and, which I think sometimes you can get in higher ed and then sometimes you can't. But thankfully for me, it was a really good opportunity. And then I was able to get my master's degree there, and there were a lot
Wow.
of good reasons. And Ohio University is in, I think, one of the most beautiful areas of the country, and like kind of Appalachia and
Mm,
Southeast Ohio. So it was a good, just a really good fit. I had some friends down there, and it just
yeah.
worked out. Yeah.
You were there for how many years?
I was there for about 3 years.
Okay. So you leave, you said I'm there for 3 years, and this is what year?
Gosh, I think I left there in 2016. Yeah.
2016. So do you know anything about mortgage?
Other than I had
A
one, that
mortgage. That was it.
was it. Yeah.
No marketing background. So then take
No.
us through your first role in mortgage was with NASB, North American Savings Bank, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
How did you find that? First, talk about when, because from a marketing perspective, it's interesting to hear how do you get a job there? Did you have a lot of interviews? Were you concerned that you didn't have a mortgage background? From a marketing, if you're looking at younger marketing people, how do they get into mortgage?
Okay, I think that this is a really good question, and I have a take on it that not everybody likes, but it's felt valid to me. So I ended up, my husband at the time took a job in Kansas City, so we moved to
Mm,
Kansas City. I'd been working remotely, under contract with Ohio University. Showed up in Kansas City and started like in earnest looking for a role, and I applied to a role at North American Savings Bank at NASB, was brought in for an interview. And thankfully, the people who had just taken over the marketing team at that time, neither of them really had a mortgage
mm,
background. So they were both, the VP and the CMO, they were both coming at this with a fresh perspective. So I think they were a little more open to other people, joining the
mm,
team who had a little bit of a varied background. But I really believe that the fundamentals of marketing, the fundamentals of customer experience, the fundamentals of, the brand experience and how we deliver that to people and the promise that we make, through our branding and our communications are really the same. All of that is the same no matter what the industry is. So
mm,
if you're an expert in this, if you have an ROI mindset, if you have um, you know, the ability to take accountability and drive return on ad spend and think about all those things, and just be really strategic in the way you kind of put it all together, you can learn the industry. And that is probably easier than learning the fundamentals of
mm.
marketing. So I don't know. Some people feel like you really have to know the industry, and maybe that's true for some for some organizations, but my experience has been kind of
The
fundamentals or
brand,
mainstream. Yeah,
understanding the brand's position and how to
yeah,
position a brand to be, at the top. So,
yeah,
you're working NASB. Are you, and at the time, were they, because they turned into be a pretty big powerhouse, were they
yeah.
that way then? Or were they kind of in the growth mode, the very beginning of the growth mode?
They were in, I would think, I mean, my perception was kind of the beginning of the mode.
Yeah.
They had a desire to grow. They were bringing in some, various leaders. So it was a really fun time to be a part of that, a really
Hmm.
fun time to get to experience that and also to learn the mortgage industry. This is before I really just thought it was all up.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
always,
it was
our
up,
metrics
up,
were
up.
always going to be better. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely, these not the bad times. It's just that was the time.
Yeah.
2016 was a great time to kind of jump in. Um, and little did you know, probably that Kansas City is the center of direct consumer direct
I
lending,
had
and you
no
probably had no
idea.
idea. I didn't
Yeah,
either. Yeah, uh, and and they've got a huge pool of great talent in that area.
absolutely.
And a
Yeah.
lot of those folks they kind of move around a little bit, but they're all very solid groups and solid companies that are in that area. So
Yeah.
you're NASB. When did y'all start diving into the lead buying? Was that always a thing?
So that had been a thing for a long time. I think that that like the ownership of that had been sort of passed around. At one point, somebody in HR was managing the lead
Right.
buying, like such a random, right? I mean, it's really random. Yeah. And then sales had done it for a while, and then marketing really started leaning into that. And then once I had been, promoted into the leadership role there, we really started thinking about kind of our mix for the lead buying and not, solely being dependent on third party aggregators, which can be great partners and are great partners. I love
Hmm.
them. But also thinking about how do you round out your mix just in terms of profitability and ease of contact and some of those other
Hmm.
metrics, so that you make sure you're delivering just a well-rounded pool of leads for your loan officers
Hmm.
to call and to work
Were
with.
in 2016, 2017, was it where when you looked at your day, was it like 80% digital and 20% print, or were you doing any print stuff, or was it all digital?
I did a little print, some direct mail pieces,
Yeah.
direct response, some of those kind of things. But it was the the bulk of my day, I'd say probably 95% was really in the digital space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
And
those were the tools and yeah.
mhm. So you were buying leads, and CRMs were a thing then. They're much bigger now. Was there a time where you said, "Did y'all have a CRM when you first got there? Was that a thing that you had,
Yeah. Fun fact, we had, I mean, it depends on your classification, right, of a CRM
like
versus
a
a,
database, like something that you
yeah,
could send
or a
these
lead
leads into?"
management system?
Yeah,
Yes, we did. Yeah. And so that was, part of my role was managing kind of our contact cadences and our,
yeah,
redistribution rules and duplication programs, all the good stuff.
yeah. And I feel like that's when we talk to customers on our side, it's, if they want to buy leads because it's so expensive, it's such
Yes.
a big investment for companies. It's usually more expensive than outside of people. It's like probably the most expensive thing they spend money on. You got to have a place to put those leads, and um, in the C and we're not CRM. It's just the CRM is so critical when you're
Yep.
doing lead buying. So I'm sure that you spent a ton of time on that. Was there a number where you were, because y'all spent, as you grew, you spent probably lots of money, was like $100,000 a month or 50? Was there a number where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we spend this much money? And then you just blew past it. But
I
was there
know.
a time where you said, this is crazy?
Yeah, it felt like it happened so gradually, but then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, here we are. Like I'm managing, millions of
Right.
dollars, and it just felt uh, really overwhelming, like in consideration to where I had been maybe 10 years before managing,
Yeah.
these small budgets for, college, university type things.
Yeah. It
Because
does add
it's
up quickly
insane.
because
Yeah.
it's as soon as the right person sees that they can, 2x, 3x their investment on, they're going to double
Yes.
down and triple down, especially it seems like in this business. They're not afraid to spend money on things that are working,
Yeah.
for sure. And you have was your strategy to have like 6 or 7 or 8 different lead sources, or was it more of like, I want to get 2 or 3 that are really good? What did you find that worked best for you?
Yeah, we really wanted a variety of lead sources, all with, a base level of performance, right? Looking at cost per funded lead in the end has to make sense in terms of loan profitability, right? So all of that has to work together. Um, but just in terms of being able to manage volume during, slower periods, being able
Hmm.
to optimize for like the most profitability, for the best performance, it was really important for us to have a variety of lead sources. And it was almost, the more the better. Like working with our sales team at NASB, particularly, and here now at Academy and Armed Forces Bank, just really thinking about the volume we need to supply, right? And then also the goals we have for the business and how can we meet that, the most effective way and making sure that we're pulling all the levers in the marketing side to help support that.
So, so are you working usually hand in hand with the director of mortgage? Are y'all talk a lot? Is that
Yeah,
kind of because
yeah,
somebody's setting the goal? Somebody's like, all right, you need to hit $1 billion or 500 million
yeah,
this year in total loan volume. So then you probably have you and this person have to back into, well, how many leads do we
right,
need to get to
right.
that number? Right? Is that
Yeah.
what you're doing?
Yes, and I'd say, kind of rounding that out maybe with the, secondary markets folks,
Mm,
just their ability to pull levers in terms of when you sell a
mm,
loan versus how you hold it and the hedging strategy and kind of all of those components, because that is important as you price the loan. And,
yeah.
so kind of all of those pieces coming together. And I think that I've been really fortunate to work with people in this industry on the sales and the secondary market side who've been, great mentors, really
Hmm.
collaborative, easy to work with, you know what I mean? And appreciative and supportive and, vice versa. And we try to, foster that amongst both of our teams, I think, or all of our teams. Yeah.
And so if you're buying these leads, how quickly do you get feedback if the lead source is good or bad? Is it instant? Is
Um,
it like within a day or two, or does it take a little while? Because you'll
so
hear it, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that we all know and love about loan officers is they are not shy to share their constructive feedback, which I think is great. If we can keep everything, if we can keep the lines of communication flowing, you'll typically what I'll see is an initial reaction,
Mm,
to I had my first, call with this lead source and this was the outcome. And now either it's all garbage or they're amazing. I want
right.
100,000 more, so you sort of get both ends of the spectrum. But really we try to take a bit more of a kind of a strategic approach. So we have some benchmarks at each, stage of the funnel, right? So from lead to contact, from contact to application started, and then throughout, and look at those leading indicators on the beginning part of the funnel, and look at those in a really
Hmm.
consistent, regular base. On a consistent, regular basis, benchmark those against other, sources that we know
Hmm.
work out well and try to be a little bit predictive in our approach, but also not just, turning things on and turning things off without an opportunity to really optimize for performance, if that makes sense.
It's yeah. So are you in are you doing all of that in the CRM? Or is it another sort? Is that where you're looking at all the data?
Yes. So our
Uh,
CRM has, some reporting kind of pre-built
hmm.
in there. And then we have they've got a great tool offsite. Relco is who we use
Yeah.
today. And they have a great tool offsite that, provides more insights and you can build more robust reporting. And so, yeah,
Hmm. So you're in the CRM as much as a loan officer is looking at
maybe
reports
not
and
as much as the loan officer, but plenty. Yeah.
yeah. That's funny because the first thing I do in the morning is I look to see how many leads did we get yesterday, the day
Yeah.
before. And it's not like I'm in that dashboard all day long, but I do look and I spend 30 minutes, who's doing
Yeah.
what, what's the lead quality look like? Is that kind of what you're doing first
Yes.
thing, taking a look at that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because that,
absolutely. And then sales numbers across the bank and
yeah,
all the things. I think that that's just part of being a good partner to our sales teams is making sure
yeah,
that you're really aware of what the impact you're having. So
yeah,
try to do that.
yeah. And so it seems like with where you are with Academy Bank now is an Armed Forces Bank with the Armed Forces brand. That is obviously a military themed brand. Um, you have some good lead partners there. Is that hard to foster? Or do you find like because you need VA deals, you need typically is it harder to find lead sources
I
or
think that's such a
not
great
necessarily?
question. I mean, it's VA is a small part of the market. And so,
Hmm.
yes, it is, I think, hard to find, really quality lead sources and kind of working the kinks out, making sure you're in touch. But I also think the mortgage is such a weirdly small, ecosystem
Hmm.
that, if you worked with somebody over here and you fostered a good relationship and you were a good partner, if you happen to move somewhere else, typically you can,
Yeah.
take those positive relationships with you and just build on that.
Yeah. I was thinking of that the other day. It's like there's only so many, VA leads out there, and you definitely have to have a strong relationship with some
Yes.
partner, some lead partner to
Yes.
to to get those leads. So as you're hitting, let's say 2019, 2020, everything is just
Yes.
Jessica is they're throwing roses at your feet as you walk in the
No.
door. How is this happening? So and then things change in 2020, probably 2021, 2022. Do you remember like a day where it was like, okay, something's different. Like we spent all this money in lead buying, or the leads are down, or do you remember like a month? Sometimes it's like drilled in your brain, like a tough experience.
Yes. I mean, I think I remember a lot of tough conversations and a lot of tough experiences during that time. And even kind of leading into it, like I know money was falling from the sky during the pandemic, but even that was hard because of the volume and
Hmm.
trying to ensure that we're delivering a good experience to these clients because in the end we want them to come back to us, right?
Hmm.
That's, really our best source of, new customers is just not throwing them away, not treating them like a widget, but treating them like a human being on the other side,
Hmm.
right? So we're going to take you through this process and serve you, and then you come back to us when you're ready to do it again, right? But and that becomes really difficult when you have, these massive pipelines and you can't get things through quickly enough. And, I mean, it just was that part was really challenging too.
Yeah.
And then to transition to, it almost seemed like it was overnight, but it was happening over time. Just this total contraction and yeah, I remember a lot of really tough conversations and a lot of experimentation and what can we do differently and how can we, maintain the volume, which was impossible. It was
Yeah.
impossible really for anybody. And that was really hard. I make a lot of jokes about people in the mortgage industry and how if you stay in the mortgage industry, you've got some emotional scars.
Exactly right.
So I
That's
said, so
exactly
you have
right.
some emotional scars.
I don't want to talk about it.
I
It
know.
is. It's so true. It definitely, you can go from the greatest to the worst in a very short period of time
Yes.
in this industry. But to your point earlier, it's everybody knows after you've been in it for a little while. I'm sure in Kansas City, in that market, everybody knows you. Everybody in direct consumer knows every kind of that whole team. Um, and they don't hold it against you, which is nice because they probably went through the same thing at some point in their career or at the exact same time,
Yeah.
um, which is kind of cool. And was there like when you see something shift, like when you see the market shift, do you cut off automatically? Like how quickly do you cut spend, or how quickly do you shift gears, or do you feel like it's a long take 6 months, or is it like we got to change now? Or if you look back on it, did you feel like it took too long? Should
Yes.
you done it sooner? What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I think that that was one of the biggest lessons learned for me. Um, like prior to that, I had been really, um, dynamic and making, you know what I mean, in terms of that spend. And it almost, it, I took too long to kind of cut back on that
Hmm.
spend. I definitely think that if I were in that position again, knowing what I know today, I would have made some changes a lot faster
Hmm.
to address kind of the to address that. I think that that was really a lesson learned is how you can be as a marketer, you can only be as effective in mortgage as the market will allow. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? There's only so many, and this is probably true for this is true for any industry, right? There's only so many high school, seniors who
Yeah.
are graduating in the state of Ohio, so you can only recruit so many, right? And there's only so many people who are automotive technicians and are going to buy automotive tools, right? So,
Hmm.
um, but I think in mortgage, it just is so much that kind of like delineation or that tipping point is so much clearer once you've been through it, maybe once.
Hmm.
And so I wish that I had been maybe a little more assertive or aggressive, kind of coming as we came out of that
Yeah.
massive
Have you
high.
have you have you ever thought about how do you break up with a lead provider in the case like that? So if this happens in 6 months, if we're everything, and then boom, something happens, is it hard to break up with a lead provider, or do they get it,
Well,
or did you learn something like
oh, yeah.
3 years ago, 4 years ago?
I think they get it because I will not be the only person they're hearing this from, right?
Hmm.
But I also think, if you can, the best thing to do, in my perspective, is to maintain some relationship, right?
Hmm.
So to maintain some level over time, because you don't want to be the person as soon as the market
Got it.
shifts to be going, hey, 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 can we get re-onboarded?
Right.
Hey, 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 remember
Right.
me? Wasn't I delightful when the money was
Yeah.
falling from the sky and now you don't need me and here I am? So kind of maintaining those relationships over time, I think is really valuable, so keeping the
That's a
lights
great point. So not go to zero,
right.
maybe drop it 70% or
Yes.
75%.
Pull
Yeah,
back to what makes sense for the business,
right.
and to what makes sense for the, in the market that you're in. But, don't go to zero.
And don't burn the
Don't
bridge.
burn bridges.
Uh,
No scorcher. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about you. You've done a really good job of kind of seems like keeping a team together that you've worked with for a little while. Is that right?
Yeah, to varying degrees. I have been so fortunate with the people that I worked with at NASB, and now, Ed came along on this adventure
Hmm.
with me here at
Yep.
Academy and Armed Forces Bank, and I would have, just taken the whole team with me if I were able to. But
Yep.
yeah, I think that the culture of your team and the attitude of your team and the way, you position marketing within the business, is so important, in being successful. And then also, I would hope that my team said that I'm a champion for them, and that
Hmm.
I, yeah, appreciate them, and then, tell everybody else within the org what great work they're doing. So I think that that's probably important too.
Have you hired anybody that's 25, 26, 24 years
Yes.
old in the last couple of years? Have you?
Yeah.
Like, what is that like? Like, how different is it now in marketing when you're young, when you're just starting your career versus maybe when you started your career?
So many
Is
years
it,
ago. Yeah.
yeah. Is there anything that you're like, I can't believe these kids they know so much more than I did, or they don't know enough? What is your feeling on people coming out of school right
Yeah.
now?
Oh, it's such a great question. So I think when I look at marketers today, um, they just have it's just a smaller learning curve because they
Mm,
grew up with it, they grew up in this digital environment. They are digital natives, and so that's much different than somebody of my generation who was, gosh, now I sound like old man River here, but my generation who, came into, I remember getting my first email address and that was a really big deal. And I remember
hmm.
MySpace and that was a really
Hmm.
big deal. And I had my top eight, but like, but today they have grown up with this and the expectations, and I think we see this reflected in our consumer expectations too. Their expectations for, are the way we interact with digital, the way we serve, the way we and the way we interact with clients is a lot different than I think somebody of other generations who maybe didn't stay up on this. I think if you make an
Hmm.
effort, obviously, of course, we can all learn new things and adjust our mindset. But I just feel like that kind of digital nativity, if you will, like growing up with it, makes such a difference. Yeah.
Do you find Are they in the office or do they work? Is it kind of blended? Is it a little bit of both or?
So we have a hybrid work policy,
Hmm.
which is great, so a little bit of flexibility, but some time in the office too, where you can have those face-to-face conversations. And so it's a mix. Yep.
Do you feel like you get a little bit more out of the new hires when you see them in the office, or is it if you're on Zoom and you're going through stuff, it's just as effective from a
I,
marketing standpoint?
I mean, this is going to be controversial, but I think because I work 3 out of 4 weeks a month remotely,
Hmm.
and because our bank, and our holding company is based in Kansas City, so 1 week a month I show up and remind everybody that they still like me and that I work there.
Yeah.
But I think it's really more about managing to outcomes rather than
Hmm.
activities, and it's probably the same for loan officers, right? Like
Yeah.
you want to manage, and sometimes the activities will give you an indication of what those outcomes are going to be, but in the end, if we're driving toward a culture of accountability and treating the business like it's our own, we're running it
Hmm.
responsibly, all of those things, and that's kind of the mentality that we're driving toward, and that ROI, um, I don't think it matters so
Hmm.
much
Hmm.
whether they're in person or at home. I think that some people do really well in person, some people do really well at home. It's just really a mix, but I think it's about setting that culture at the top. That's
Yeah,
my,
it's kind of like the activities. If you're looking at the lead thing, activity is like a conversation. How many of these leads we're buying are we having any conversations? That's kind of like what activity is when you're hiring somebody or you're working with them. If they're not doing any activities, the outcome's not going to be very good. If you're
the
not having any
outcomes are not
conversations
going to
with
be good. Yeah,
leads, it's not going to turn out very well at the end.
right.
I tend to agree with you. I feel like most most everybody is more effective remotely. I feel like work life, they enjoy their life better. They probably enjoy working with the companies from home, and it's the manager's job to get them to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, deliver on
So
expectations. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Love that.
exactly. So Brandon, you um, so you're at North American Savings Bank back. Was it you feel like it was a stale brand? Because it's kind of fresh. It seemed like it freshened up. What were your thoughts? How do you know that's you? So how do you know it's time for a brand refresh? Is there something that tells you that
Yeah.
what is it?
Well,
Because well, let me preface with this.
yeah,
We talk to a lot of mortgage companies. This is an old industry. It's still like you think about real estate. Real estate is to me is like bleeding edge. They got all their cool branding. They've got all the cool stuff they're doing. A lot of independence, and then you have banks and credit unions and mortgage shop bank brokers, and it's 15, 20 years behind. Getting dragged along. So
yeah,
you have a lot of tired brands. So
yeah.
get how do you know you have a tired brand and it's time for a facelift?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, it for me at NASB, and we actually just went through this with Academy too. Um, it's really about it's it starts with what are our clients' perception,
Hmm.
of the brand, and just having an understanding of that. And that should be ongoing, right? We should be measuring that consistently and have an ongoing understanding of that. And then layering in, what are our differentiators and what makes us different. And from there, when you understand what, the customer's expectations are, what their experience is of you, and then what your culture is and what the employee experience,
Hmm.
then I think that you can say we have a we from here we can come with a promise that means something, that's meaningful to the client, that's meaningful to us. It's the promise we're going to make to you every day. And then you can evolve your creative and your look and your feel and your all of that good stuff, to help support that. And then, things that naturally flow out of that are new
Hmm.
websites and, making
Hmm.
sure that your collateral and the way, just that should really infuse and flow through, the entire organization. But I think it's really about being in touch with what's happening and what consumer expectations are, and then making sure that you're in touch with what's happening and what our clients' experience is, and sort of
Hmm.
saying, okay, here's the brand experience. We're going to make this promise. Here is the client experience, and this is how we're going to keep it. And then this is the promise that we make to customers. And then from there, I think that part, that piece, that brand promise is more important almost than anything else.
Hmm.
But you're creative and the look and feel and, all of that kind of flows. Your visual brand cues all flow from that.
Are you talking to consultants at that stage, or are you trying to work that brand image with just the idea of who we are before you bring in, or do you bring in consultants at all to help you with that? What are your thoughts on like hiring somebody to help you with your branding?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've had mixed experiences bringing in agencies to help
Hmm.
or not. Um, and some of those experiences have been really great, but usually they'll be really great if we as an
Hmm.
organization really understand ourselves, right? And then, they can help us facilitate some of that external research, with clients and, they can help us distill that and help us translate that into something visually appealing. But it really, I think the most effective way, whether you work with somebody externally or internally, is really having an understanding on your, you know, marketing team and on your leadership team that really an understanding of who we are as an organization before you even get started. And I think that really sets the stage for whether or not you're going to
Yeah. And
rebrand.
that helps you with saving them time, just the time
Yes.
that work, and then money that you're going to spend back and forth with a consultant. I mean,
Yes.
most importantly, it really, really makes it more concise when you
Yes.
bring in a third party to help get you over the finish line.
Yep.
That's kind of
And
what you're looking for.
you can sort of know who we are today, but aspirationally, this is who we want to be. But
Hmm.
whatever you come out with, whatever promise you're making today, that has to be a promise that you can keep to consumers because otherwise, you lose all trust and credibility in the
Yeah.
space. So just knowing, yeah, who you are, I think is so critically important.
So when you have a team of loan officers, and how much interaction do you talk to them directly, or are you in meetings with them, or are you talking to their manager mostly? What do you find is most effective?
So one of the first things I did when I started at NASB, like week one, and hilariously enough, the first loan officer I sat with was Nick Alps, and he is now the president of the mortgage division here at
Wow,
Academy and Armed Forces
that is
Bank.
wild.
It's like crazy, right? But I literally awkwardly sat next to him, taking furious,
Hmm.
copious notes, listening to him interact with clients on the phone
Hmm.
and seeing the experience and really kind of understanding what it's like for them. Because sometimes I think we as marketers are a little too removed from that.
Hmm.
And this idea that, you're 100%, not all places, but many places, 100% commission and the quality of leads matter because imagine making these dials connecting with people and getting sworn at or told off
Hmm.
or what have you. So I think it gives you a sense of empathy
Hmm.
and just an appreciation for how hard it is to be on the other end of that line. So my goal has always been to be really integrated, with the sales teams. And I
Hmm.
think that as a marketer, we are the most effective when we can collaborate with our, sales counterparts,
Hmm.
hear first person feedback, and be able to take that and then provide, context and feedback back. But having that kind of collaboration and that open feedback loop, I think is really, really critical. So I still get, IMs. Today I get IMs from, loan officers who have
Hmm.
questions or comments or, ideas around how we could do something differently. I get emails from them, sometimes phone calls, so
Hmm.
it's, a really mixed bag. But I would say that I probably talk to the sales leadership at least once a day, so there
Yeah.
is a, yeah.
Well, okay. So then back to the lead questions.
Okay.
We are here. It's March of 2025. You guys, you buy enough leads, and interesting that I kind of have some, it's a small number of leads, but we do have a good insight of like kind of where the market's heading based on lead count. If we see a little bit of an uptick in the last 2 weeks, we know, oh, things are looking good. Like it's better
Yeah,
than it was 90 days ago.
right.
Do you, I, are you, what are your feelings as things look today? Because it looks a lot different than it was 3 weeks ago. When you're looking at leads, do you get to see, oh, this, maybe we're turning the corner here? What are your thoughts there?
I do think we're turning the corner. I mean, I think even in the best of times, January is a tough month. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You always start the year really in a
Can
slump.
only get better.
It can only go up from here.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. But I do think that we're turning a corner. I'm gonna knock on wood because I'm a little bit superstitious, but it does feel like the activity has picked up. The
Hmm.
applications have picked up, lead counts picked up. I mean, we're seeing, good connection rates and all of those
Hmm.
kind of things. So indicators would say we're,
Yeah.
hopefully,
Do you do anything with like maybe 10 years ago, if you had say 10 loan officers and you bought 100 leads a day, each loan officer got 10 leads. Do you find now that you can do 15 leads per loan officer, or maybe you can only do seven per loan? Do y'all get into that breakdown at all? Like how many leads per LO? Is it more than
yeah.
it was 10 years ago, or was it about the same, or is it less?
Great. That's such a great question. So we have a really interesting structure here. And kudos to the leadership team on the sales side. So we have a group that is strictly consumer direct, right? And they are taking leads and they're calling and they're doing all the things that they need to do. And then we have a group that we consider kind of more of this hybrid approach that's out there creating
Hmm.
relationships with realtors and centers of influence in the industry and in their communities, and maybe organizations to be their preferred mortgage provider, those kind of things. And then they're also taking leads. And then we have a group that is really, truly, a retail focused group of loan officers. And so for us, there's a lot of variation kind of depending on where you fall and what your
Hmm.
expectations are. Um, but I would say at a high level, it really depends on what your tools are. So, as a loan
Hmm.
officer, if you are empowered with dialers and automated voicemails and you have the right marketing automation following behind and you have kind of all of those pieces that are empowering you to do what you do best, which is sales,
Hmm.
that's really the key. So all of that workflow automation, I think, and I have seen it work where then loan officers can take exponentially more leads because they're empowered to do so, but it's so dependent on the tools that and the investment, that
Yeah.
organizations made.
Do you make that decision on technology investments on something like auto dialer, or is that a different? Are you trying to push that side of things as well? Like, here's the
Yeah,
technology that we need.
but it's really collaborative. Again, I
Okay.
mean, from a marketing perspective, it's really understanding what the sales team needs and then being able to say, oh, evaluate solutions together. I think
Yeah.
us making any of those decisions kind of in a vacuum would really set us up for failure because, again, we're not doing that every day. This is not our experience every day. So bringing in subject matter experts, bringing in the sales team, having that perspective, I think is really critically important to any investment that we make. So nobody is, at least in my experience, nobody is making those choices kind of in a vacuum. It's really collaborative.
Yeah. Bring them in, and so as we wrap up here, you started with Academy Bank, which also has Armed Forces brand. When you were thinking about this job, did that was that a were you was, how did you manage the two brands? Was it interesting? Did it bother you? Was it confusing?
No, I loved it. I actually think
Okay.
that it's so exciting because they have I mean, they have some core things. We
Hmm.
have, as Dickinson Financial Corporation, some core pillars, and values that we all ascribe to. And that's kind of at our foundation. And then we have a brand promise that speaks to each of those audiences, and I think for me at least, because I really like a challenge, I loved the idea of having two brands, two distinct brand voices, two distinct
Hmm.
audiences to talk to. That was something that was really appealing and exciting to me and still is today. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it seems like they're both growing. From what I can see, is they're definitely you're in growth mode, which is always fun
it is
to
so
to
fun.
be on
And it's
offense and not defense.
And it's so fun to be part of an organization that, from the top down wants to grow and do it responsibly,
Hmm.
manage your risks, all the things that are important, in banking, but that really has a desire, to innovate. That's, perpetually one of our focus areas. And so how can we do things differently? How can we think about things differently? Yeah, I really can't say enough good things about the
Hmm.
culture.
So, last question here for all the loan officers out there, in your opinion, because it was Nick Alps that you sat with, right, when you're very
Yeah.
beginning, what makes a great loan officer?
Oh, this is so easy, actually. I think empathy for for the person on the other end, of the phone or on the other side of the table or whatever, however you're interacting with them. I think that just bringing humanity to this and remembering that for most people, this is the biggest transaction
Hmm.
of their lives, and so if we can just really keep that at the forefront, and if they really keep that at the forefront, those are the ones that are the most successful. And I think I've seen that play out over and over and over again, just communication, clarity, kindness, empathy,
Hmm.
all of those things I think really make the best loan
Yep.
officer.
And you can do those things over the phone, in
Yes.
person. It doesn't matter. You're shaking
Yes.
hands with them, or if you're
Yes.
talking to them on a phone
If
call and
you're
you never met
texting,
them.
if it's an
Yeah.
email, yes, you can do that no matter what, no matter how you are communicating with them. And I think that that's one of the really cool things. So
Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome, very fun conversation, and I'm excited to show it to everybody. You are great. Your energy is always awesome, Jessica, and you're a great partner to work with. So all those folks out there, if you have a chance, Jessica's a lot of fun. So thanks for joining, Jess.
I,
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Jimmy.
You got it. See ya.
Bye.
Bye bye.